Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's CAPITA webinar. We are coming to you live on October 10th, and today you're going to be learning about HUD's guidance on the use of AI in housing from Vincent Franco. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also happy that you were able to join us on our new learning platform. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law pictured here. So just a friendly reminder that the materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. We are on this new platform, so we have a little bit of new lingo to learn. So know that on this new platform, all of our webinars are going to be called virtual classes. And so the easiest way to join is when you know that the webinar is happening, just log on to the website and you will see a big green banner at the top of the screen that says that your virtual class is happening now. And you'll be able to just click on that and join, and you'll be able to do that with every one of our webinars moving forward. When you first go to join, it is going to have you conduct an audio test. We ask that moving forward, it looks like most of you did today, thank you so much. But if you could just join with listen only, it helps that we avoid any kind of audio feedback when you join with a mic unmuted. And then we do have other ways you can interact. Just a heads up, that little icon down in the center, that's a microphone icon. Should you join and your mic is unmuted and you realize it, you can always just click on that to mute yourself. But we do still, of course, want you to participate in the webinar. We welcome your questions, we welcome your comments, and you can utilize the public chat for this. So you'll see a little box down at the bottom. It'll say send message to public chat. You can type in whatever question or comment that you have, and then you'll click on that little paper airplane icon, and it'll send it in, and then we can all see it. Let's say you ask a question or you make a comment that you think maybe got missed along the way. You could always go ahead and raise your hand, and then we'll know to kind of look to the chat to see what we missed. Here on this new platform, they also have the ability to set little statuses for yourself. So if you wanted to utilize that tool, you would go over to the users list that's just below the public chat, and you'll click on your name and then set status. And then you have the option of showing that you're stepping away for a moment. You could raise your hand from there as well. Show that you're undecided, confused, sad, happy, show applause, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you are feeling in that moment. And then it's always something that can be cleared away later. I do want to give y'all a heads up before we get going with the webinar that there is a red menu panel or column, I guess, all the way to the left-hand side of your screen. We did realize that if you click on this panel at all while you're in the webinar, it does unfortunately take you out of the webinar itself, and it'll take you to the home page of the website. It's super easy to join back in. You'll just click on that green banner again at the top of the screen, but I do just want to give you a heads up that if you click on that, it is going to take you out. And then I am actually going to put in several links to the notes section. That's it says shared notes. It's just below the public chat, but it's up above the users list. And all of these links are for the webinar feedback survey, the link to join our weekly newsletter, the link to access our CAPITA webinars archive, that's now moved to YouTube. Joining us on LinkedIn, and then the final link there is also one that you could copy and paste and you can bookmark it, and that's going to take you right to the homepage so that you can log in easily every time you want to join one of the webinars in the future. But we're so happy that all of you are on here with us today, and with that, it is with great pleasure that I introduce today's. You did myself too early, guys, sorry. Vince Franco, and Vince, I am handing presenter rights to you now. You can go ahead and take over.
Thank you, Brooke. I see them right down there at the bottom of the screen. Thank you very much for the overview of this new learning management system. Brand new for me, navigating my way through this. So bear with me. This is my first kind of live version of using the Native Learning Center's new LMS system here for webinars. And also thank you for the wonderful introduction as usual. So we'll get right into it. A bit of confession or confession to the group, I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence, but I do know a thing or two about HUD, and have been involved in Native American housing for 12 years, so I'm familiar with the repercussions. This is a very interesting topic because, and a little bit of a scary topic. In fact, this whole presentation really is really kind of a warning. I'm going to share with you information that I've been privy to coming from HUD on concerns about artificial intelligence. And HUD has even gone to a couple steps here of putting out precautionary information to those of us in Native American housing, and even those on the public side. In fact, most of this is coming and is driven on the public side of the equation. But nevertheless, I think as individuals, tribal employees involved in housing to any extent, we need to be aware of what's happening out there. And I think like any kind of social media or any type of intellectual property and things out there, there's pros and cons to this artificial intelligence, this recent wave of artificial intelligence. So I want to share with you HUD's concerns and just all the information that I've been able to accumulate. I want to share this with you. Then you can make an educated decision, share this information with others, and make sure you understand what's going on out there in the community. So let me see if I am successful in moving my slides along. Yeah, I am. Very good. Okay, and here I am at the top of the screen. Maybe you can see me. I can't see you, but I can see who's in the room, and I can see any comments that Brooke alluded to on the bottom of my screen. So on my left eye, so to speak, I'll keep an eye on the chat box, and with my right eye, I'll keep an eye on the presentation and try to move through the presentation as quickly as possible, present the information. If you do have a question, as Brooke mentioned, please put it in the chat box. I will do my best to try to answer that question for you. If I can answer the question, what I like to do with presentations is put those kind of more difficult type of questions into what I call a parking lot. And I take that information with me, do a little bit of homework, and try to come back with an answer. So if there is a question or a comment that's put in the chat box that I can't fully answer, or it's just too complicated to answer in the short period of time we have together here, then I'll tell you that much. And then I would suggest that you send either Brooke an email at the Native Learning Center or myself, a dedicated email. Either way, that's the best way to get a hold of me, is by email, and then I will do my best to follow up and get an answer. This is brand new, uncharted territories. Usually my realm is in regulations, federal regulations for those of us that have received federal funding. So this will be interesting to do this program. What you see on what you should see on the slide or on your screen right now is a description and objectives and a quick agenda there. So let me go through those three very important areas. The description says this training session attempts to provide the highlights and warning signs in accordance with President Biden's executive order and HUD's most recent announcement pertaining to discrimination. That's really the problem that they're seeing, that HUD is seeing, and that the federal government at the highest level is seeing, is discrimination under the legislation of the Fair Housing Act and the concerns that the AI, I'll probably go back and forth calling it either artificial intelligence or AI. I like to use acronyms as much as the next person. So AI in my scenario here, of course, refers to artificial intelligence posed to the tenant screening process and to the application to housing opportunities through online platforms that use targeted advertising. Again, most of these concerns are over on the private, or I'm sorry, on the private side, and not so much yet on our side of the equation, those of us that receive federal funding, or as I sometimes refer to it as the public side, public funding, federal funding. Most of this is being generated, but nevertheless, the concerns are still there. The warnings that are coming out from the president's office and from HUD apply to all of us, whether we're on the public side or private side. You can see the objective right in the middle of the screen there. Attendees will be two different things here. One, exposed to HUD's mandate to provide information and guidance for housing entities to understand the concerns of AI. And secondly, how to combat discrimination enabled by automated and algorithmic bear with me on that one, tools used to make decisions through AI to access the housing and other real estate-related transactions. So, to the best of my ability, I'm going to try to convey this information, what AI is doing, and kind of maybe short the right, but some of the advantages that are kind of like you really don't know what they're doing with this artificial intelligence. So we're going to try to expose some of that to the best of my ability and to the best of the information that's out there. Then you can take it for what it's worth. Down at the bottom, you see 5 things here that are on the agenda. What is the Fair Housing Act, or FHA? Number 2, what is artificial intelligence? What is it? And number 3, what is the real issue? Although I kind of alluded to it, and that is discrimination. So what is the issue and related issues here? 4th, what can be done about this? What protections can we take? And and lastly, what are the resources? Number 4, now let me address that as a 12 years compliance director for a Native American tribe. Those of us that receive federal funding in the form, well, most directly, it would probably be the Indian Housing Block Grant, in this case, administered through HUD, through its Office of Native American program. We know, or should know, that the regulations tell us that we are supposed to do many things to protect the information that we're gathering in all facets of our operation, our financial activities, and our compliance related to our operation. When it comes to housing, whether you're a tribally determined housing entity, a TDHE, or a department of the tribe, or even a public institution, organization, you need to be aware. If you receive federal funds, there are certain protocols and regulations that have to be in place. One of them that has been growing in emphasis that really kind of falls in line with what we're talking about here with discrimination. Discrimination occurs when certain people or groups of individuals are treated differently, not allowed to do certain things, or information on them is treated without the respect that it deserves. And that's part of what I'm seeing with this artificial intelligence. And when that happens, we're overstepping into federal regulation concerns. Particularly, and you might want to write this down if you're not familiar with federal regulations, and that is the protection of personally identifiable information, known as PII. It is a federal regulation that we have to abide by if we are receiving federal funds that says, and I'm paraphrasing here a bit, that we need to, as recipients of federal funds, we need to do certain things. One of them was we need to identify of our constituents, our customers, our clients, what could be considered personally identifiable information. Is it a social security number? Is it a date of birth? Is it a marital status? Is it income? Is it gender? Is it your physical address, your educational background? Is it biometrics that's becoming more and more popular these days with fingerprint scans, eyeball retina scans that are becoming more and more prevalent everywhere. Are any of those personally identifiable information? Yes, all of those are. And all of that information, whether we're talking artificial intelligence or whether we're talking just day-to-day operation of your housing program under NAHASDA, Native American Self-Determination Act of 1996, we know that we have regulations that we have to identify that information, whatever it might be, and put in mechanisms in our internal controls to protect that information. That applies to us in the housing area. It applies to everyone that receives federal funds. To the extent it's becoming more complicated because obviously we are moving more and more from paper trails over to electronic record keeping. So as we do that, and as our reports, whether they're housing related or just general operation, become more sophisticated and more electronic, this becomes more and more of a concern. So we've got artificial intelligence out there kind of, and here's the warning signal, kind of circumventing and operating outside of the parameters of the potentially of the regulations we have to have in place. So again, words of warning, that's what this presentation is, words of warning, what's happening out in the larger community that we need to be aware of. So let's keep going on. Again, keeping an eye on the chat box for any questions. Otherwise, and I'm always the kind of person that if you have a question or concern or want to share something, please do it in real time. You don't have to wait to the end of the presentation. I don't do it that way. I don't like waiting to the end because that could be an hour from now. And I like to answer questions to the best of my ability, unless they're too complicated, in real time. So you're not interrupting me. If you have a question or concern, or even if you want to share something, I'll do my best to recognize it, answer it if it's in a question form, or at least acknowledge your presence and your concern or issue. All right, and I'll do the same. I'm going to share information where, anecdotal information where I have it from my experience being a compliance director. This is jumping, it's very sensitive control. What is Fair Housing Act? This is the legislation that's been around for a number of years. I'm not going to go through all the legislation. It's multiple pages. It would be a good, if you've never read the Fair Housing Act, you can Google it. It is it's the act, the law, the legislation. You can Google it, you can read it. You can also go to HUD's website. They're going to have it there, and you can read it. Sometimes it's referred to as FHA. That is not the mortgage FHA. This is federal, the Housing Act, Fair Housing Act, enforced by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. That's HUD. Prohibits discrimination in housing-related activities across the board, whether you're public sector or private sector. There is a little screenshot on the right of subchapter 1, general regulations, declaration of policy. And again, I'm not going to go through it. It's much too lengthy, and it's written, of course, in legal jargon. So I'm not going to do that. We'd be spending all day trying to interpret the legalese of the document. But as Brooke had alluded to, there is, as you see in that little red box, it is one of the attachments to this presentation. There are 7 different links or attachments, documents, including the president's notice that I mentioned a few moments ago, and also another one, the HUD issue on Fair Housing Act, guidance on applications of artificial intelligence. That's another one, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But there are 7 attachments, 7 reference documents. So if you feel inclined to read these lengthy documents, please, and it's not a bad idea. If you're in housing, if you're in Native American housing, you should know what the legislation says. You should know what the law says, let alone what these regulations that I'm talking about from time to time say. You should be familiar with all of those. And let me just make a quick pitch here, because we're talking about artificial intelligence, we're talking about housing, we're talking about federal funding. If you haven't taken a grants management class for tribal grants management class, I would strongly recommend that you do. Just reading Brooks' comments here, restores items he put together for available for download. Exactly. This presentation and all those attachments, is Brooke is saying, are available for you as a resource almost immediately when the presentation's over. If not sooner, you can download this information and the presentation and the course in the My Course section of this new LMS system, which is great. I just think that's just wonderful. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, delicate touch here. I am discovering the hard way that you need a soft touch to move these slides forward. You know, and I'm brutal. I'm big gross motor skills. So I touch something, it tends to break. So bear with me as I'm moving through here. HUD's Fair Housing Act guidelines. HUD has a real nice document. There's a QR code over on the right side of the screen. Literally, I put it right on top of the screenshot of that booklet, the Fair Housing Equal Opportunity to All, issued by HUD. And it says, what is the Fair Housing Act? This is HUD's interpretation of it. The other shot I showed, the other slide showed you the legislation, which you need to know, the actual law. Here is HUD's interpretation of that. If you don't have this, I would strongly suggest that you get your hands on it. Go to HUD's website, hud.gov, Google or put into their search engine, Fair Housing Equal Opportunity for All booklet, and download it. Keep an electronic version of it so you can cut and paste where you need to pull out certain references, and do what I do. If you can, print out the document. If it's not too massive, try to print it out and have literally a desk copy. I do that all the time with the federal regulations because I'm a little bit old school, a little bit of a nerd. I like to have those documents in my hand so I can flip through them at a moment's notice, look at them. But I also keep an electronic version because as a compliance director, it's an old habit to cut and paste right out of the regulations if I need to develop a policy or inform someone what the regulations say. It's a lot easier to cut and paste this information. You can do the same thing here, but it's definitely a good read. It says types of housing covered, includes most housing, including private housing, public housing, and housing that receives federal funding. So that's us. That is tribal TDAGs and other housing departments and other entities. Anyone that receives federal funding for housing needs to be aware of these regulations and guidelines and the legislation. The first bullet down towards the bottom there says there are a few exemptions, such as owner-occupied buildings with no more than 4 units, single-family houses, sold or rented directly by the owner, housing operated by religious organization, or as they say these days, faith-based. Religious organization, it's kind of an old school name. We're moving away from that. They're faith-based organizations or private clubs. I'm not aware of any private clubs, but I guess there could be, that limit occupancy to members only. Don't know what that example would be. There's the screenshot on the right, the QR code. I love QR codes to take you to the site in real time. And I did check that QR code out before we started. You can do it too. I think you can take it right off the screen that you're looking at and actually go to HUD's Fair Housing document. And it's also an attachment, attachment 3. Again, as Brooke mentioned, there for you to download and keep handy at all times, along with all the other documents that you need. And while I'm on that note, let me tell you, if you are receiving federal funds, I know we're talking AI and we're talking TDHEs and housing, that type of thing, but if you receive federal funding and you don't have a copy of the two federal regulations that I want you to write down, maybe you're familiar with them. The first one that you must have is the uniform guidance. It's also known as the super circular. Its grown-up name is 2 CFR, Code of Federal Regulation, Part 200. That's the uniform guidance. That is the mother of all federal regulations. You must have that. Download it. It is a rather large document. It's a good 100 pages or more. And I recommend that you go, the best way to get the most up-to-date version of that federal regulation is to go to, you may want to write this one down too if you don't already know, ecfr.gov. E as in electronic, CFR as in Code of Federal Regulation. ECFR, thank you, Brooke, ecfr.gov. Go there. Once you Google is probably the best way to do it. Google 2 CFR Part 200 or 2 CFR Part 200 Uniform Guidance. And then once you get to the search engines, ecfr.gov should be at the top. Use that link to take you to the uniform guidance. Why, you might ask? Because it is the most user-friendly version of the uniform guidance. It's written in a narrative format, much easier to read, much easier to cut and paste if you needed to do that. So always, if you're looking for a federal regulation, if you're looking for 2 CFR, the federal regulations of 2 CFR Part 200, use the ecfr.gov link to look for your documents. Okay, that's the first one. The second one that you must have from a federal guideline standard, other than what we've been talking about so far that you see on the screen, is HUD's version of its federal regulations for housing. You might want to write this one down. 24 CFR Part 1000. That one is called Native American Housing Activities. If you receive the Indian Housing Block Grant, then you need to have that set of agency-driven federal regulations. The first one, the uniform guidance, is put out by the Office of Management and Budget, also known as the President's Office. It is the parent organization, the parent regulation, and then each agency, HUD in this case, has its own set of federal regulations. That's the 24 CFR Part 1000. Get that, download it, print it out. It's got 6 subparts to it. It refers to NAHASDA. It refers to all the different components, the IHP, the APR, all the different transactions, everything. You need to have those 2 federal regulations in addition to the Fair Housing Act that we talked about and the legislation, the Fair Housing Act legislation. And while we're at it, you might as well add the NAHASDA regulations as well. And while I'm at it, let me throw out a third set of federal regulations that you should have. It's not AI driven, but if you're managing or involved in housing, Native American housing, and you're receiving federal funds and you're doing construction work and you're spending more than $2,000 of federal funds for housing construction, then you want to download, identify, find the Davis-Bacon and Related Acts, DBRA, Davis-Bacon and Related Acts. That's the legislation that you need to have readily available if you're doing any kind of construction, regardless of AI issues. That's what you need to have. Thank you, Brooke. Davis-Bacon and Related Acts. That's the legislation, and you need to get familiar with that too, particularly because they just came out with new revisions to Davis-Bacon, new revisions to 2 CFR Part 200. So just kind of a sidebar note here to make sure we're all on the same page with these federal legislation and federal regulations that oversee all these activities. Now let's get back to Fair Housing Act. So we're back to that particular issue. I want to keep moving on that, touch this very lightly to move forward. What is the Fair Housing Act? What is prohibited under fair housing? The sale and rental of housing. It is illegal, discrimination is the key word here throughout. Discrimination, 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 or anti-discrimination in this case. It is illegal discrimination to take any of the following actions because of race, color, religion, sex, including gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, family status, and national origin. Did they put religion in there too? Yes, they did. And faith-based religion issues. And that is to refuse rent or to sell housing to refuse rent or selling a house or any type of apartment or condo, whatever it might be, unit, from a discrimination standpoint, or refuse to negotiate for housing or otherwise make housing unavailable to certain groups and not to others. Set different terms. Again, I'm as a compliance director, I'm making the correlation here between these regulations and the uniform guidance that I was talking about a moment ago. There is a direct relationship. Again, I can't help but go back to the 2 CFR Part 200, the uniform guidance. Those are the federal, if we receive federal funding, we know that we cannot discriminate. And from a compliance standpoint, we know that we have to treat everyone the same. So that is an anti-discrimination compliance protocol. So we know we've got to have that in place as well. Okay, so we cannot discriminate, and there's attachment number 6. So that's there for you to look at as well. Skip one. Okay, I did. What is prohibited? Also included is the use of different qualification standards. Okay, now can you see where AI might play a part in this? Because we don't know all the deep mechanisms buried in AI. Must also include the use of different qualification criteria for applications or sale. We cannot do that, such as income standards, application requirements, application fees, credit analysis, and so on. What is prohibited? Eviction, evicting a tenant or a tenant's guest without cause, harassing a person or family, fail or delay performance of maintenance or repairs. Oh, hello, Linda. Limit privileges, service facilities of a dwelling, assign a person or to a particular building or neighborhood, those kind of questionable activities. Let me look at my box, make sure I'm not, yes. Welcome. All right. And that's attachment 6. Number 7, or page, slide number 20 here. Also, what is prohibited on the mortgage side, illegal discrimination to take any of the following actions based on all of those parameters we talked about before: race, color, religion, sex, disability, family status, national origin. To refuse to make mortgage loan or provide financial assistance for a dwelling. Condition the availability of a loan on a person's response to harassment. Boy, you can't get any more discriminatory than that. Refuse to provide information regarding loans. Impose different terms or conditions to different people on loans, different interest rates, points, and fees that are not calculated or methodically presented. Discriminate in appraising a dwelling and refusing to purchase loans. That's attachment 6 as well. Here we go. Also in advertising, and I think this is probably the area where AI presents the most challenges and concern for myself and for HUD and for the president's office, is in this area of advertising. Nearly all housing, including private housing, public housing, housing that receives federal funding through the different legislations, NAHASDA in this case, it prohibits, under the Fair Housing Act, prohibits the making, printing, publishing of advertisement that indicate a preference, limitation, or discrimination because of the race, color, religion, etc. And at the bottom, probably the most important, prohibits applies to outside organizations that we have direct or indirect relationships with publishers of advertising, for example, such as newspapers, if anyone uses a newspaper these days, and different directories, as well as to persons and entities who place advertisement in these periodicals or whatever, and probably more important and more up to date on websites and social media sites, because they're everywhere, they're prevalent, and you know as well as I do, the websites and the social media are much more prevalent than old school newspapers and directories. Those are phasing out. Websites, social media, and there's so many different platforms out there. That is the issue, and it says the concern there, and other online social media platforms. New platforms being developed all the time, new protocols and logistics, and what's the phrase I'm looking for, built in more and more, becoming more sophisticated. And when we use third-party resources for advertising and promotion, all of them, you can pretty much count on the fact that all of them to some degree are going to be using artificial intelligence in one way, shape, or form. And maybe they are contracting with third-party management organizations and website development organizations that rely on artificial intelligence to different degrees. So real concern. 22. Okay. What is prohibited? More on that. Also applies where advertisement itself violates the Fair Housing Act and other protocols that are in place that we are simply not aware of. Even if the property being advertised may be exempt from the provisions of the act, like it mentioned a couple slides ago, there are a couple situations where housing is exempt, but it's a limited fraction of all the housing that's out there. So second sentence there in the middle, other federal civil rights laws, that's a whole nother set of federal regulations, the civil rights regulations that came out under the Johnson administration. All of that, talking about different discriminatory, I forgot about that. We can't forget about Civil Rights Act of the 60s that came out as well. That's in there. And then the closed in box at the bottom, examples of advertising that may violate the Fair Housing Act include phrases, limited phrases. They got a couple examples here, like no children, which indicates discrimination on the basis of family status, or no wheelchairs, which is an ADA, Americans with Disability Act conflict, as well as being discriminatory for individuals with disabilities, which indicates disability discrimination. Absolutely. And over on the right are kind of a screenshot of examples of more illegal advertising. Bait advertising, known as bait and switch. That's what they used to call it. Advertise one thing and then turns out they're really trying to promote something else that costs more, but they got you online or they got you in the store in the old school version. The second one, non-transparent ranking of search results. Bingo, circle that one. That's where AI comes in. That's where the mystery sometimes is this non-transparent ranking or processing of different information, sometimes personally identifiable information. And remember, we're on the hook for personally identifiable information, even for vendors that are using our information to do any type of processing that benefit our operation or our financial activities or our compliance if we're receiving federal funds. So that second bullet is very, very important, very scary. 2, things are happening. Phony free offers, just about anything you see. I get emails all the time. I get text messages all the time from what you think would be reputable organizations like CVS and Target and different well-established firms. It turns out it's a scam using those major retailers to catch you, to bait you. And you get them in your emails too. And that is, like the fourth bullet says, it's a manipulation, not so much of children, in this case, but adults. Even the smartest individuals and the most savvy can get tripped up. Those people out there committing fraud are very intelligent people. I mean, they kind of know what they're doing. This is one of the things from a compliance standpoint. This is one of the major concerns as well when we talk about grants management, and that is the reduction of risk, mitigating risk. And one of the biggest risk factors out there is fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. Do you know the state of Florida leads the nation in identity theft? More than, Florida's a large state, but it's not the largest. But per capita, we lead the nation in identity theft. But we've got all kinds of other things out there. And this is where the protection of personally identifiable information was created, to protect this information because of fraud, because of embezzlement, because of mismanagement. These are all risk factors. And that's what we're trying to do here in this screenshot. We're trying to mitigate the risk. And the problem we have is we got third-party sources out there doing some of our work for us, whether we know it or not, that are using the newest form, and that's artificial intelligence to generate. I know all of you have been on the different social medias, TikTok being the one, maybe the most newest and prevalent. And I've been on it myself. I've looked at many of the reels, laughed at a lot of the fun, but you can tell when there's artificial intelligence being generated for something. I was watching something the other day. I thought it would be humorous. It was something from a show back in the day that everyone was watching. And when I say it, you might recognize it. It's Beverly Hills 90210. Very popular 10, 15 years ago. Everyone was watching it, and a lot of Shannon Doherty and a lot of other people got their start there. So the reel was about Where Are They Now? It was called Where Are They Now? This is what they look like back in the day when they were on this show, and here's what they look like now. And some of the pictures that they show, you look at it and you go, that's not Shannon Doherty. That's not that person. That's someone else. And I could also tell in this particular case by the voiceover that referred to the show, Beverly Hills 90210, which is their zip code, right? They referred to it, the voiceover referred to it as Beverly Hills 9,200. 210. I'm like, 9,210 or 90,210. This obviously is artificial intelligence, AI. And so many times they're obvious. But on the other hand, many times they're not as obvious. And they can trip up even the most savvy business person out there. So my screenshot over there talks about some of the false claims and other things, hidden advertisements and other counterfeit things, dangerous products and services that you might think are legitimate. And even if they're not dangerous, there's still an unknown manipulative cause here with AI that we just need to be aware of and sensitive to. And most directly, HUD has recognized that, the president has recognized that, or his staff anyway, and the administration anyway, and they put mechanisms in there to bring it to our attention and to try to provide us with mechanisms, with ammunition, basically, with knowledge and with mechanisms to help us combat this. So at least we know that it's being recognized out there. And that's what this presentation pretty much is all about. Be aware of these things. We talked about fair housing. I want to try to move on. Affirmative fair marketing may be required. Here's another: with advertising falls into marketing. Federal law requires that applicants for participation in HUD's subsidized and even their unsubsidized housing programs pursue affirmative action housing marketing policies. So we're obligated on a federal level, on so many levels with housing. We've got the Fair Housing Act, we've got HUD and its requirements. If you're receiving federal funding in the Indian Housing Block Grant or any type of federal funding, You've got the Uniform Guidance Regulations. HUD's got its 24 CFR Part 1000. Those are all the we've got a lot of bosses out there. It behooves you and, everyone, not just you personally, but everyone to understand what these regulations are, what the legislation is, and what these tripping hazards are. Recently, AI. This is to help ensure that individuals with similar income levels in the same housing market have the same range of housing choices, etc. These are some examples, and I apologize. They're a little difficult to read, so I'm not going to go over them now because I have a difficult time reading. I got 3 or 4 of them here. But they're once you have the time, you slow down, you download this, you can take a look at my examples, 3 or 4 examples here of discrimination. So I'm going to kind of move over them because it just didn't make the transition here. They're very difficult to read. What probably happened here is my version of the original PowerPoint. I stretched it out, the actual screenshot too much. And when you do that, it blurs the words a little, and that's what you've got, a blurry description. But there are 3 or 4 examples here of discrimination, of different scenarios. So I'll leave these for you to look at another time if you're so inclined, when you can, at your own pace, look at these and just see a couple, 3 examples. I have 3 or 4 of them here. So I'll move through that, and I apologize for those. First time doing this, so very, very sorry on that. But they're there. You can read them at your leisure, and when you can slow the pace down and look at them and take your time with them. So, and I would encourage you to do so. Again, I apologize for that. What is artificial intelligence? Well, we've all been exposed to it in one way or another, whether you're on TikTok, and looking at outrageous claims. Ones now show, there's all kinds of things out there that just don't make any sense. But some of them are much more subtle. All right. Brooke, here's the poll that you and I were talking about before. How familiar are you with artificial intelligence? And you've got 4 options here. I'm going to kind of turn this back over to Brooke momentarily to walk through this poll. Does that sound right, Brooke?
Yep, I'm setting it up right now. Give me 1 second, folks, and I'll get it started. But kind of consider what your answers are right now between A, B, C, and D. Here, you know what, y'all? I'm like typing the full answers into it. You have what the answers are up at the top of your screen. So I'm just going to leave the response choices as plain A, B, C, and D just to save time. This is our first time doing a poll together on the new platform. So thank you for being our guinea pigs. We appreciate you. Vince, I'm going to give you back control of the slides.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So we've got that poll. My guess is that most of us have been exposed to AI in one way or another. So my educated guess is most of the answers are going to be B and C. B, I've heard about it, but don't know much about it, at least how it applies to some of these operational situations like housing. Or C, a little about AI and its impact. But here we're talking kind of like a subcategory of artificial intelligence. We've all been exposed to it, to a certain extent, whether we believe it or not. Who knows who knows these days almost what's real and what's not real anymore. You've really got to understand what's out there. And that's why I'm preaching to you a little bit about being able to understand the legislation and the regulations that pertain Two, thank you, Michelle and Elizabeth, for answering. Don't know anything. And yeah, that's what I figured. No one's really an expert on it. If you were an expert on AI, you wouldn't be sitting in this session, and you'd probably be, in a dark cave somewhere or in someone's basement doing kind of crazy behind the scenes black hat, as they call it, black hat activities for the unknown dark web, but no, most people don't know the repercussions. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Linda. Uh, yeah, and that's kind of where I fall too. See, I know a little about the AI and its impact. I'm learning more every day. And when I came across this information, AI in housing, it just scared me. But it also provided an opportunity because I see the relationship between the regulations that we all have to abide by if we're receiving federal funds. So, and the compliance person in me said, you've got compliance is all about repetition. It's like being a parent, consistency, being not so much formal, but being consistent, applying things the same way, being fair. Thank you, Melody, for your answer. Being consistent in it, that's what compliance is all about. It's like being a parent, making sure that you're consistent in your application and uniform and not discriminatory, even if it's your own children you're dealing with. So thank you for answering our first ever poll on the new Native Learning Center's learning management system. I appreciate that very much. All right, AI. Let's just talk about that for a little bit as we're moving through the program in the remaining time that we have. Artificial intelligence refers to the technical description here, similar to the similar of human intelligence, so they say, in machines that are programmed to think like humans and mimic their actions. Okay. The term may also be applied to any machine that exhibits traits associated with human mind, such as learning and problem solving. And AI systems at the bottom there are used in various fields, from simple tasks like filtering spam emails to more complex ones like self-driving cars. I've yet to see that or in real time. Medical diagnosis, even playing chess in a world gym. Now, the medical one, I can see that happening, and I've experienced that. Everything these days, you've heard of electronic medical records, EMR. My wife was in healthcare for years and years and years until she retired. She was constantly talking about EMR, electronic medical records, transitioning. The hospital industry did a very good job of transitioning from paper system to electronic system, and even in taking it to some degree beyond that into AI to help, as it says here, with diagnosis and actually with some of the operational procedures, I understand, like LASIK surgery and things like that. So that they've really done a good job of moving from an old-fashioned paper trail system to electronic. Now, when you meet with you seldom see your doctors anymore, right? You see your PAs and others. Less and less you see the doctor, but they come in with their iPads, don't they? Everything's electronic. Your whole medical file is on their iPad. Or the nurse scoots in with her telemedicine, his or her telemedicine unit, on a cart. Everything's right there, and all the peripheries are attached to it for blood pressure and pulse ox and all those kind of things are attached to it. So they've done a really good job of that. So is the hospitality industry. They've really transitioned. They've done a good job as well. Not as good as the medical field. They're the gold standard. But now over here with us on the tribal side, and even others, that might fall under housing that aren't even necessarily tribal. If you're receiving federal funds, as I mentioned before, if you're up to speed on the federal regulations like I am, you are noticing that they're doing the same thing. They are the OMB, Office of Management and Budget, who is the parent of all the federal regulations for all the federal agencies, is telling the federal agencies to move, for them, the agencies, to move from paper to electronic and to use AI where it is available and lends credibility to what they're doing. The agencies are also directed, whether it's HUD or Department of Energy, Education, Justice, etc., EPA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the agencies are mandating us as recipients of federal fund to follow the same path, move from paper trails to electronic. So if you haven't made that transition, that is where the federal agencies are going. That's what's going to happen. If you were going to a grants management course that is offered by the Native Learning Center, if I were doing it, there would be a whole day dedicated to that transition from paper to electronic and everything that comes with it. The retention of records, personally identifiable information. AI is becoming more of an issue. I've integrated that into that discussion now more than ever before. So that this is all wrapped up in one big package. AI is not the entity floating out there anymore. It's being integrated more and more. And I think housing is one of the first areas that it's being, I don't want to even say dabbled with. I mean, this is already being incorporated. It's already integrated into a lot of programs. So screenshot over on the right, little matrix of different types of AI functions, from deep learning, facial recognition. See that on the top left? If you fly as much as I do across the country, you would be familiar with a system called CLEAR. CLEAR is CLEAR. CLEAR is a biometric system. It first started with Delta Airlines, I think it was, and now a lot of the now it's been incorporated in all of the not all, most of the mid-size and larger TSA airports across the country. It is a biometric system. It is artificial intelligence in a biometric format. In this case, there's a kiosk that you walk up to, take off your glasses and look into a little monitor, and it reads your eyeball. It reads the retina of your eye. And with that, they've got all the information they need to clear you to walk through the TSA security check. So even if you have TSA pre-check like I do, if you have CLEAR, you're expedited through the security process even faster. They literally walk you right through. They escort you right through security, through this CLEAR system, which is biometric, which is facial recognition. A step below that, I know we had this at the Seminole Tribe of Florida, is the Chronos system. I think it's still there. Brooke can verify that for us. I'm sure it's there. And that is also a biometric system. That's also AI. That one is not nearly as sophisticated as CLEAR. It's not a retina type thing. It's a fingerprint and a 4 or 5 digit employee number. So, and it's wall mounted. I think you can do it online as well, but you enter a 4-digit number. If it's a wall mounted unit, you put your finger on top of it, usually an index finger, and it reads your fingerprint. So between the two, the AI intelligence built into it is able to identify who you are. And all of human resources, everything is done through that system. So if you want to take time off for sick leave or vacation, or just about anything, clock in, clock out during the day. If you're an hourly employee, you would also clock in, out for lunch and back in. All of that is done through the Chronos system. That's biometrics. It's not to the level of face recognition, but it's still a biometric system, and it's AI intelligence. Okay, your session is about to end. Why would I get that default? My session isn't going to end. I got some kind of drop down that said my session was about to end. Bear with me. If it does, I'll be back. So I hope it doesn't kick out on me. Back to my little matrix there. Data integration, automated tasks, quantum computing, I'm not quite sure what that is, cloud computing, and chatbots. How many of you seen chatbots on different websites? I was on a car dealership website. I don't know why. I'm not in the market to buy a car. But anyway, I was on it, and it's a local one here in my area, and a chat box popped up and said, "What kind of vehicle are you looking for, Vince?" It knew who I was, which was a little bit scary. And then, I said, "I'm not looking for anything in the moment." And it was like, "Well, how is your Kia holding up?" I have a Kia Sportage that I got from Kia a couple of years ago, leased it, and then bought it out. How did it know I had a Kia? Oh my God, you're freaking me out, AI. So, yeah, that was the chat boxes are common now. You can have conversations with a chat box on just about any website these days. That's AI intelligence there. And some are more sophisticated than others, obviously. Let's go. I got about 20 more slides to get through. You're doing real good. You guys are a great audience. You're doing great. I hope this is good information, both the information you see on the screen and the anecdotal information that I provide with my experience, and also the regulations that I'm trying to integrate into the program that aren't in the presentation, but are actually directly related to what we're doing here. All right, let's keep going here. HUD's Fair Housing Guidance on Applications, Housing Applications. What is AI? We talked about it. We've got different definitions of what they call narrow AI, systems that are designed and trained for a particular task. And obviously there's going to be the opposite. On the right is a screenshot of a Copilot. Down at the bottom it says definition: narrow AI focuses on solving specific problems or handling particular tasks. For example, facial recognition software, like we were just talking about. Language transitional tools, very interesting. Converting Spanish to English and vice versa. Just speaking it into your smartphone through the app. Interesting. Chess playing programs. Okay. All kinds of different things out there. That's, very specific. Very delicate page movement. Okay, that was where we just came from. There we go. Next one. General AI, the opposite of specific. General. Okay. General theoretical systems that can perform intellectual tasks that a human being can't. Interesting. Operates through a combination of algorithms. Thank you. I said it right that time. Data and computing power, and it's continually evolving with advertisements, advancements in different things such as advertising, diverse applications, web search, finance, e-commerce, robotics. That's probably the one we see most often, is human-like robotics, animal-like robotics. That seems to be very, very popular. We see those all the time. The mechanical dog walking across the university lab floor, or the robot type thing. But there's so much more to it. And the one highlighted in red, which is very, very scary, information extraction. What does that mean? Information extraction, being able robotically or artificially, through artificial intelligence, pull information from multiple sources simultaneously, something humans cannot do. I mean, we can multitask, but we cannot search with our own brain a dozen different databases at one time. That takes computers, that takes artificial intelligence at speeds way beyond the function of human capability. That is the driving force. Information extraction. It even sounds threatening. It sounds mafia-like. We have ways of making you talk. Information extraction. All right. Information extraction. This is the key task for AI that involves extracting structured data from different sources, from unstructured and semi-structured sources, not just text, but data in general, It can help AI systems understand, analyze, and use, believe it or not, natural language data for various purposes much, much, much quicker than human capacity can, in various purposes such as knowledge discovery, questioning answers through chat boxes like we were just talking, and decision making. And this decision making, I should have highlighted that in red, is some of the things that we're receiving from artificial intelligence that may be accurate, it may be discriminatory, it may be from unknown sources or unreliable sources, but we have no way of verifying it because it comes from probably 1,000 different sources that are accumulated through artificial intelligence into one consistent answer. Does it make sense? Taking 1,000 sources, humans can do maybe 10. I can multitask from time to time and do two things. I'm very linear. It's even difficult for me to do two things at the same time, let alone 10, let alone 1,000. We need computers to do that type of multitasking to the, on steroids, to the nth degree. That's where artificial intelligence comes in. That's where it can be beneficial. That's where it also can be downright threatening. We just don't know, right? There's a fear factor in there. AI for information extraction involves using techniques such as machine learning, NLP. I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure what NLP stands for, to extract structured information from unstructured data sources. Kind of what we were saying before. Sources out there that are available, thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands of sources. Could you imagine, it's like the ability to have an encyclopedia or a dictionary in your brain that you can tap into and know where anything is at any given millisecond and be able to tap into it. And maybe those dictionaries are written in 17 different languages that are, some of them are dead languages like Latin, but it's still a viable resource. You see where I'm going with this? There's so many resources out there that can be accessed, and AI with computer generated ability can tap into all those sources. So, here we are. How does this relate to what we're doing in housing? Well, the information, the capacity that artificial intelligence has to gather this information and present it to us, and we might even not know that it's artificially generated because it could be coming through a vendor, a third-party vendor that we might use. That is, the vendor is using artificial intelligence some way, somehow, and the decisions being made by the artificial intelligence, because it's using reliable and unreliable sources to the 10th power, might be providing decisions that are discriminatory, that we're not even aware of. So it's hard to even articulate some of the concerns here. So let's keep going. What is AI advantage? Reducing human error. Yes, on the positive side, on the pro side of AI, we've got computer technology that includes AI that is an advantage to humans, right? In general, reducing error. But the other hand is AI might have what's referred to as zero error, zero tolerance. And we've all been exposed to the pros and cons of zero tolerance, probably mostly in elementary school or school situations where the school has a zero tolerance for something, and it apply, something happens to us or our child or a relative's child, and we're like, doesn't that organization use common sense? We shouldn't always have a zero tolerance protocol in place. We have to look at the human side of things. AI, to my knowledge, doesn't have that capacity, the human compassion. As it says here, AI generally moves towards a zero error, zero tolerance calculation, and thus recommendation or answer to a particular series of data. Zero errors, no right or no gray, just right or wrong, on or off, no, zero tolerance, if programmed correctly. All models are based on predictive analysis, thus leaving no scope for errors, no possibility of exceptions to the rule, which is very human, right? AI helps to save both time and resources and helps in achieving accurate and efficient results. Yes, it could. There's a lot of wonderful applications there that AI presents, but we have to understand that AI typically in its processing, in its number crunching, in its data gathering, and in the results that are generated from that is going to be a zero tolerance result. Zero error is what AI is intended to do. The bottom automates repetitive tasks. Yes, that's the other pro benefit, repetition. That's why computers can look at 1,000 databases in 2 seconds where the human cannot do anything even close to that. There's the redundancy of a lot of calculations. That's why AI is used for very difficult math equations and redundancies. It eliminates redundancies for the human factor. So that is a positive. That's very positive, but it also feeds right into the above. It minimizes its goal, so to speak, if it has a goal, AI in general, is zero errors, and to eliminate redundancy down to its, yes or no, no exceptions to the rule scenarios. That's the bottom, data entry, customer focused business. It's like you would envision watching a movie, talking to a robot that does not compute, that type of thing. It's very methodical. It's yes or no. Those of us of a certain age will remember that. That does not compute. That's an old phrase. ATT phone company. Thanks, Michelle. Exactly. Yeah, ATT. A lot of those automated systems, zero tolerance. You only have 5 options. And if you pick the wrong option, you're kicked out. You got to go all the way back out and start over again. Yeah, there's no room for error. And that's probably the lightest version I can think. Can you think about, take that and just extrapolate that out to what about if we were talking about medical procedures, life or death situations, and this AI has a zero tolerance, right or wrong. There's no room for error. There's no room for human interpretation. There's no room for passion. There's no room for interpretation. That's what AI does. I don't know how they would build in those soft skills we have. That's kind of probably like the ultimate goal is to bring in the human factor into AI. But as far as I know, it doesn't deal with emotion. AI does not deal with exceptions to the rule. It doesn't deal with empathy or compassion. Everything is of the, straight and narrow. Okay, advanced, smoothly handles data. Yes, that is an advantage of that. And the bottom highlighted, quick decision making. Yes, because AI, computer assisted AI, I guess that's what all AI is, computer assisted, right? That's redundant. As I said, it has access to billions of different types of data points, right? Billions, where you and I can maybe handle a dozen, and I'm just being hypothetical. I can handle 2, you can handle 20, Brooke can handle 100. AI can handle 1 billion at one time. Way, way, way beyond Einstein level, way beyond anyone's level. So smoothly handled data, yes. Quick decision making, yes, because it has all the information it needs instantaneously, usually. AI has the skills and algorithms to process and make conclusions. That's the scary part, and make conclusions from data in very less time. Well, in microseconds, you might split seconds, because it has access to billions amount of data, all there, all those dictionaries and encyclopedias, the world's knowledge, to the most part, in all the languages, dead or alive, instant. Can you imagine that? Immediately have access to that. AI has the ability to quickly grasp and extract relevant data which might be needed for analysis. That's the key, which might be needed for analysis, because it is so yes and no, right and wrong, black and white, zero error. That's where the human factor comes in, that second bullet up towards the top, the analysis part. So it behooves us, to the best of our ability, we need to try to find out where AI information is provided for us. Is it from our it's obviously probably not going to be built in to mechanisms that are done at a tribal level, but it might be at a vendor level or a vendor's vendor that is providing information. So it behooves us to try to identify where artificial intelligence comes into play in the information we're relying on, whether it's housing or anything. And then if we need to, force ourselves into the equation to do the second bullet there, to analyze what is definitely going to be very black and white, very numbers driven, zero tolerance situations. Can this roll over to housing? I think that's what's being recognized by HUD and by the president's office, those smart people in Washington, D.C., for the most part anyway. They're recognizing this and trying, no one knows, because this is on uncharted territory, how to give the tools to the folks that are using the end product because artificial intelligence is surrounding us and it's closing in the ranks on us. It's everywhere. It's everywhere, folks. You know that now. Okay. It has, in third bullet, AI can also further process of data. Yes, it can. It's all about data. Checking my messages real quick. Okay. So we got a little bit of time. We got 15 minutes to wrap some things up here. So let me move through. I think you get the gist of what I'm talking about. Quick decision making. Slides. Enable data assist. That's the chat box that we talked about, or as Michelle pointed out there, the AT&T phone company and their automated system. We're not the only ones, of course. Just about everyone is going to that type of system, and it can be very helpful. It can streamline the process, and it can also be very frustrating. Process with workflows. Okay. Disadvantage, data privacy concerns. If it's yes and no, if AI has access to billions of forms of data, which theoretically it would, which it would include everything about us, because it's got just about every data site in the world, including the biometrics that are out there, the Clear system that I talked about, the Chronos system. It's got access for the most part to all of that, and probably things we're not even aware of. Then we've got data privacy concerns and breach of information, personally identifiable information. So we've got a real concern there with data privacy, let alone the decisions that are being made. Could you imagine there's entities out there that know everything about us, and they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to gather that information, and they're making decisions about our future, our health, and our friends and our family and our colleagues and our clients and everything in our whole circle of influence. They have access. They're making decisions in a lot of cases that we have no control over, based on information that's being provided to them. Even to our doctors and our medical people, you should always question and never take anything that even your doctor saying is gospel, even though we've been raised to do that, because junk in, junk out. The old adage for computer: junk in, bad information going in means bad information coming out. Check everything. I learned that from my wife. When we get medical bills, the first thing she does is she goes with it to make sure that all the coding is correct, because there's a human error. That is one thing. It may not be human. It might be AI that are assigning everything we do with doctors is got a medical code assigned to it. And if it's entered incorrectly, it can make a huge difference in our prognosis, in our diagnosis, in our bills. So that analogy applies to what we're talking here: data privacy concerns and information. And bill, of course, assumed in there, even though it has zero tolerance, are going to be biases and incorrect, inaccurate content. But it's content we don't know where it's coming from. That's the scary part. The algorithms can inadvertently perpetuate biases and incorrect information because of the data sources that they're receiving. And here's another thing I need to share with you folks. If back to the federal regulations, I said that everything's moving from a paper trail over to electronics. Data gathering. The agencies are moving us more and more towards data gathering, data reporting, electronic. That's why, for those of us that are with TDHEs and housing authorities, the Indian Housing Block Grant, in particular, the IHP report and the APR report we do at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, we have moved from a Word document to an Excel sheet to an online form called Epic, and then now we've got the GEMS program. And those of you that have that funding know what I'm talking about. And we're moving more towards a data-driven system more and more. Well, that's not just happening with Indian Housing Block Grant and housing. It's happening all over the place. More data processing, and we're moving in that direction. Let me finish up with lack of creativity. Yeah, that's the human factor too. Zero tolerance also takes out all the creativity. If you're a right brain artist, would not survive. Right brain people would not survive in an AI environment, right? Because everything is left brain, everything is right or wrong, anything is data driven, zero tolerance, and that's a disadvantage. There's no creativity, there's no human factor in AI. So just take that for what it's worth. No emotion, no emotional disadvantage, lack of creativity. Yeah. It is not gonna there. In summary, AI offers efficiency, very positive, data-driven insights, yes. Campaign optimization, yes. A lot of data information, but businesses must also address what AI lacks, and that is ethical concerns, the human factor, privacy issues, exceptions to the rule, and any other human type empathy that we would put in. And we just got to make sure that it's not discriminating on the information or data, whatever it may be, for housing or whatever, based on all the different data that it receives. Okay, we really got to be concerned about that. So let's we know the issue now, so I'm going to move past that. We know the, let me go back to that one. There is a document right here, that screenshot. That is a good document. That is one of the attachments. That's what came from HUD. Guidance on the application of Fair Housing Act to the screening of applicants for rental housing. It's about a 6-page document, kind of talking about what I talked about over the past hour plus, about the issue of artificial intelligence and being aware. We know the issue. Applicants. Trying to progress carefully, but it wants to jump. We know the issue, yes. The issue. And I don't think this is going to tell us anything more than what I have already talked about. There are violations for discrimination all across the board, but it's much more subtle than that. And I think it's buried in the information. This is a subtle, minute, devil's in the details type of concern. And that is making sure you understand the information that you're getting on anything, not just housing, but anything, where the information is coming from and is it reliable. We see it sometimes when we go and look at news features, TikTok, and all the different reels and news things that cross our that we have access to on a regular basis. And I know you look at it and go, that can't be real. That can't be real. Can this be real? it's probably AI generated. And if you look at the comments, everyone says, oh, that's AI, that's AI, that's AI. Some of those things are very, very clear, especially when it comes to visual. But some of the data that's being provided to us in different sources, that's much harder to determine. So that's where we've got to spend our time. What can be done? Well, HUD has got some information. You've got the attachments that I've provided. The best thing that you can do is kind of read up on this stuff, be aware, share the information, share this presentation. Don't take anything as gospel. Even in your own healthcare situations or anything, just make sure that the data comes from reliable sources. Oops. And we've done that. What can we do? Follow best practices, even with housing providers. Double check your information. Be aware of this information. Be on top of your game. You're in the right place taking this session, which I'm going to end in the next minute or two and kick it back over to Brooke to close out. But, it behooves you to, be aware of AI. It's not all it's made up to be. It's not, we laugh at some of the things we see on TV and on, the different reels and news. We laugh out loud. Sometimes I do. It's fake. But those are the harmless ones. The ones that we have to be aware of are the ones that can make or break how we protect our program, how we protect our tribe, how we protect our housing program, how we protect ourselves, and how we protect our customers, our clients, our tribal members, making sure that we at least recognize the fact that some of the information might be manipulated by artificial intelligence. We got to be aware of that. I can't snap my fingers and give you 3 or 4 things that you must do to correct all that. This is very, very personal to all of you and all your programs, but protect yourself. Be aware that AI is a wonderful tool. Yes, it is. The internet was a wonderful tool when it was first developed. Now, over the years, it's developed into a much more broader mechanism, which does have a dark side to it, unfortunately. We want to make sure that if we're going to use AI or rely on it, that we're receiving to the best of our ability information that's viable and usable. And we've documented that fact in our protocols, in our policies and procedures, maybe in our internal controls, because that's a requirement of federal funding to have internal controls, to have policies and procedures. So you may even want to recommend or actually develop a policy for your internal controls that says, to the best of your ability, you will monitor all of your operational functions, all your financial functions, and all your compliance, to meet the letter of the law, to fit all the federal regulations, etc., and put in a blurb in there about also to monitor the information that is either real or perceived with a source of artificial intelligence. And at least you're recognizing it and that you're addressing it and not being caught by surprise on the downside and find out that the information, the data that you've been receiving for whatever has been manipulated or is inaccurate, or worst case scenario is discriminatory. So you want to protect yourself by putting policies in place and mechanisms and actual activities that at least say to the effect that you recognize the pros and the cons of artificial intelligence, and you're constantly searching and seeking for ways in your internal review, yourself, what's called self-monitoring, to make sure that you do not have these issues or concerns. So that's all I have, folks. Thank you for being great customers. Unless you have questions or concerns, I really appreciate you being there. I'm going to turn it back over to Brooke.
Thank you so much for this presentation, Ben. Such an important topic as the use of AI continues growing and growing and growing. Folks, before you head off for the rest of your day, I did put the webinar feedback survey link into the chat. If you could please take a moment to do that for us, it helps us know what is working well, what we can improve upon. And then we do also share the feedback with our instructors. So it is really helpful to us when you do that. Our next webinar is going to be next week on October 15th. We hope you can join us for that. It's going to be the next portion of the Mitigating Hazards, Preparing for and Responding to Emergencies and Recovery Strategies series. This one's going to focus on the fire rescue aspect. So now that you have joined our online platform, that's all you'll have to do. And then you're just going to log in at the time of the webinar, and you'll see that green banner at the top of the screen, and you can join it. You just have to register once now, so spread the word to your colleagues. Our webinar times haven't changed, so 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, and 10 a.m. Alaska. But we hope to see you on for this next one. We have moved our recorded webinars archive to our YouTube channel, so I'm actually going to put that link into the chat for you right now, so you are still able to find all of our old webinars. That goes back for about 2 to 3 years. And all those are on our YouTube channel, so we hope you enjoy them. Please also check out our upcoming events. We post them to our various social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and we have our in-house produced podcast, the Hopathanga Native American podcast. You can listen to that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Simplecast. And then if you prefer to actually watch our guests on video, then you can find those interviews on our YouTube channel as well. But thank you so much for coming on and for joining us for today's webinar. Vince, thank you for all the amazing information. And now when y'all are exiting the actual webinar, this actual virtual class, if you just go over to the My Courses section, you will see this title listed in your courses, and then you can just click through all the pages of the course. There's little white arrows down at the bottom of the screen once you open it. And so you'll be able to download a copy of today's slides, as well as all those amazing resource materials that Vince had put together for you. Some of them are large, so you'll see a link to go to the PDF to download it. The smaller ones, it's literally right there on the screen for you to download within the course page. So it just kind of varies by file size what I was able to do. But all of those are available for you. And I hope that you'll take advantage of the amazing resources. So Vince, thank you again. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. Like I said, when it's time for the next webinar next week, you just log on to the platform. You'll see that green banner and you can join just like you did today. We just have that one registration now. But thanks again, everybody. Stay safe out there and enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Bye, Vince. Take care, everybody.